My parents laughed at my art career, saying I wasn't their kid. At their anniversary party I played their game, and publicly shattered their world. My parents made fun of me by saying I couldn't be their kid. They told the server I was adopted when I ordered something else at restaurants. They joked with other parents at school functions that the hospital must have switched infants because I was nothing like them. My mom would comment, "Our real daughter would have been athletic when I quit soccer for theater." My dad would tell his golf pals that my love of reading indicated I wasn't his since no kid would choose books over athletics. They thought it was hilarious. After I dyed my hair black at 12, they informed our extended relatives at Thanksgiving that I wasn't theirs since nobody would make such strange decisions. When I went to art school instead of business school, people scoffed. The humor changed. Refunds are now due from the hospital. We undoubtedly have our ideal daughter somewhere. It was spoken to my face during supper. They told strangers who praised my works. They'd tell my guy when I got him home. Later, he abandoned me because my family was too odd and he didn't want to cope with child-hating parents. My older brother Ryan didn't get these jokes. He met their needs well. He played football, attended state business school, married his high school lover, and had grandchildren immediately. My dad's wedding speech thanked them for having at least one child. Everyone laughed except my Aunt Claire, who later told me it was cruel. But my worst moment was winning a national sculpting prize. It was big. Prize money, gallery display, everything. The presenter looked frightened when my mom responded, "We're still not convinced she's ours, but if she is, then sure, we're proud." My parents attended the ceremony. Audience members shuffled uneasily. Dad said, "Yeah, we keep waiting for her real parents to show up and claim her." They chuckled like it was usual. I decided they'd play this game then, I'd play better. They planned a huge party for their 28th anniversary. I was invited to speak. I said yes. I spent weeks planning everything but the speech. Calling my Aunt Claire, I requested all prenatal family pictures. My mom appeared different before and after my birth in photos. My dad's yearbook showed brown eyes. Not the green he said was our family's. I got creative with picture editing basics. Not insane, just compelling. The celebration night arrived. My folks were running their normal show at the head table. After being congratulated on raising 2 kids, my mom responded, "Well, 1.5 since we're not sure about that one," while pointing at me. Ryan gave the impassioned statement first. Then my turn. I stood and stated I wanted to address a long-standing issue. The room quieted. My parents constantly joked about my not being theirs, and I finally knew why. They were correct. Not my biological parents. I retrieved photographs. My pre-birth photo showed my mom appearing different. I pointed out the eye color in my dad's yearbook photo. I said none of them were artists, although my biological grandma, who died before I was born, was a painter. I'd been skeptical for years, but their continuous jokes prompted me to investigate. Silence filled the room. Mom's face whitened. I continued running while my dad said. I stated that explained why they never bonded with me, felt distant, and could joke about me not being theirs since they knew. I thanked them for raising me despite not being their daughter. Since blood matters, I understood why they favored Ryan, and didn't blame them. I thanked them for keeping me despite knowing the truth. My mother wept. Dad stood and said, "That's ridiculous." Of course, I was their daughter. Aunt Claire tried not to grin. Very gently, I opened the envelopes. Blank papers were within. I removed them and let them fall on the floor, white sheets swirling about me. My hands shook as I looked at my parents and spoke the words I'd been holding back. I made it up. The images were modified. Fake eye color. False grandmother story. All of it. All the proof I provided them was fabricated. My mother screamed after 2 seconds of silence. Everyone froze at this high-pitched sound. My dad rushed forward, knocking his chair over, and moved toward me with a new expression. Phones were pulled one after another. It made it worse to see others holding them up and capturing everything. My mom was screaming and cursing, wondering how I could do this to them and calling me nasty things in public. Guests stood up, some approaching, some retreating toward the exits. Ryan sat at the head table with his mouth wide and face white. Claire grasped my arm painfully next to me. She dragged me away from the microphone and toward the side exit. My dad kept coming, pushing past people, and he yelled that I was dead, that I was no longer his daughter, and that he never wanted to see me again. He pushed past the coordinator who tried to block him. Claire kept tugging me, and I tripped attempting to keep up. I turned to see Tara get up from her seat and grab Owen and Emma, rushing them to a separate entrance with her hands on their shoulders. Ryan hadn't moved. He sat looking at nothing while commotion erupted. Some were shouting questions at me, some were calling my parents, and some were simply filming it on their phones. Claire led me into the hallway through the side door. My legs felt strange and detached, like they weren't mine. She kept tugging me along in the hallway and parking lot without letting grip of my arm. I noticed I was sweating when chilly air struck my face. So violently was my body trembling that my teeth chattered. Claire escorted me to my car and asked for my keys. I took them from my handbag but dropped them twice before I could give them to her. She opened the driver's side and pulled me toward it. "Drive to my house. You can't be alone right now." I climbed in and tried to start the car, but my hands were trembling. I began it after 3 tries. After Claire went to her car 2 places over, I sat with the engine running and stared at the steering wheel. Through venue windows, I saw people moving about and the commotion I'd left behind. Claire pulled beside and indicated for me to follow. I put the car in drive and did as she instructed since I had no other choice. Claire's house was 14 minutes distant but seemed like hours. Sweaty hands kept sliding on the driving wheel. Every time I stopped at a red light, I saw myself in the rearview mirror and looked funny. At her place, I parked awkwardly in the driveway and had to park twice. She opened my door and helped me like I was sick or injured. Inside her residence, she guided me to the couch, where I sat. She went into the kitchen and opened cupboards and ran water. I sat gazing at the coffee table, the magazine on it, and a water ring from a glass on the wood. Everything was muted and distant, like I was underwater. Claire returned with 2 tea mugs and placed one in front of me. She sat silently in the chair across from me. That made me cry. Not silent sobbing. The ugly sort when you can't breathe, your nose runs, and you make awful noises. Claire waited with her mug, letting me fall apart. When I could talk, the words were garbled. I told her about the 8-year-old restaurant jokes, 12-year-old Thanksgiving announcement, the time they informed my date I probably wasn't theirs before prom, and the award ceremony when they made the joke in front of everyone essential to my career. They always made me feel like a mistake they had to keep. I told her Ethan left because he couldn't handle parents who belittled their child. Whenever I attempted to make them proud, they made another joke. Claire nodded like she'd seen this for years and was waiting for me to see it. My phone buzzed in my handbag. The humming continued. As soon as I took it out, the screen was filled with notifications, texts and calls that were too rapid to read. Ryan's name repeatedly. My cousin Carla, Mom's sister, Uncle Tom, partygoers. My relatives' group chat was insane. Messages too rapid to track. Opening Ryan's texts first made me regret it. "What were you thinking? Mom is hysterical. Dad punched a hole in the wall. How could you do this? What is wrong with you?" My aunt, my mom's sister, sent me a long mail calling me nasty, selfish and ungrateful, stating I embarrassed my parents on their special day and owed them a huge explanation. More texts from cousins wondering what happened, some stating they saw videos online, some supporting my parents, others asking for my side. The humming continued. Another SMS or call every several seconds. The alerts kept coming until my hands started trembling again, so I shut off the phone. The abrupt hush weighed. Claire stared at me from her chair, and I stated I couldn't read anymore. She nodded and requested more tea. Though I hadn't touched the first cup, I agreed. She up and returned to the kitchen, leaving me to reflect. Venue floor blank sheets were likely still dispersed. My parents probably remained. Maybe they went home to handle things away from the cameras and onlookers. Ryan was probably attempting to calm everyone down as usual, being the good child who solved problems. I was on Claire's couch after blowing up my family in front of 50 phone-wielding witnesses. Claire returned and asked me the question I'd avoided. "Did you plan this to hurt them, or to make them understand how much they hurt you?" I said the second one, wanting them to feel what I felt, but as I sat in her living room with the weight of my actions, I realized I didn't have the solution, might have been both. I may have wanted them to ache like they had for years, maybe I wanted them to feel unwanted and unwelcome. Maybe I wanted to watch them squirm in public as I did at that award ceremony. Since I'd always been silent, the prospect worried me. He accepted the jokes and went on. The problem-free one. I didn't believe I could prepare something that vicious and precise, but I had. I spent weeks on it. I edited images, wrote articles, and rehearsed my speaking. I knew what I was doing, and did it nonetheless, knowing it would destroy them in front of everyone we knew. That was no accident or rage. It was retribution, cold, calculated, and flawless. I glanced at Claire and said I didn't know it could be both. She nodded like it was the answer she anticipated. The night in Claire's guest room was restless. When I acknowledged lying, I saw my mother's face every time I closed my eyes, how it twisted and crumbled. I watched my dad lunge at me with a new expression. angry and maybe wounded. I witnessed visitors using their phones to record and upload everything. Ryan was transfixed at the table, his sister's breakdown upsetting his ideal existence. I kept thinking about the floor's blank sheets. I got what I desired. I made them feel as I did. I openly humiliated them as they degraded me. I rejected them as they rejected me for years. Felt horrible. I couldn't articulate why it was dreadful, hollow and wrong. Around 3 a.m., I got up and used the restroom. Saw myself in the mirror. Same face, same person, yet changed. Someone who planned and executed retribution well. Someone who would intentionally harm others and watch. I returned to bed but couldn't sleep. Lay there looking at the ceiling and rehashing everything till sunrise. I heard Claire answer the phone in the kitchen around 8 a.m. She said quietly. She called my name. She came in the guest room doorway with her cordless phone. "It's Maya. She won't stop calling until she talks to you." I greeted. Just started asking whether I was okay, where I was and what happened. Someone's Instagram feed showed party footage, apparently many people since it was spreading. She wanted to know whether I needed her, if I was secure, or if I was crazy. I assured her I was okay at Claire's and possibly had lost my mind. She claimed she was coming over and hung up before I could argue. Claire returned the call and called Maya a friend. I nodded and hopped in the shower, thinking the hot water would make me feel human. It didn't. Turning on my phone after the shower was necessary. I couldn't avoid it forever. From the guest bed, I hit the power button and saw the screen light up. Notifications flooded in immediately. 60 messages, 20 missed calls, voicemails, emails. The group chat has 100+ new messages. My gut tightened as I gently scrolled through them. Ryan's were worse since they weren't furious. They were bewildered and hurt. "Why did you ruin their beautiful day?" Everyone watched. There are videos everywhere. "Mom won't stop sobbing. Dad is yelling things I've never heard him say. Tara is furious. The kids are asking unanswerable questions. You humiliated them in front of everyone they know. Why? Why?" I read his messages again to find rage to fight. But this confused hurt made me sick. So I listened to voicemails. My mother kept weeping and saying, "How could you? How could you do this to us? How could you lie like that? How could you humiliate us? How could you?" she said after almost 2 minutes. The message from my father was different. His voice was icy yet controlled. No emotion. "Do not contact us again until you are ready to get down on your knees and apologize for what you did tonight. Do not call. Do not text. Do not show up at our house. You are not welcome until you are ready to beg forgiveness for this humiliation." He hung up. I held the phone and stared at the wall, realizing there was no turning back. To make them feel what I felt, I succeeded. I had to accept being the perpetrator. After packing, I thanked Claire for letting me crash at her house about midday. She hugged me at the door and meant it when she said to call if needed. I drove 20 minutes back to my flat without the radio because I couldn't tolerate noise. Parking in my customary place, I climbed the steps to the 3rd level. My legs felt like I'd run a marathon instead of only staying one night. Everything in my apartment looked the same but felt different. The wall shelves held reproductions of my sculptures, which I had sold to galleries in 3 cities. The prize certificate was framed over my desk. Gold letters on cream paper declaring my national recognition. I was pleased of that certificate when it arrived. I pondered showing it to my folks before realizing they'd make another joke. As I stared at it, I realized that none of these successes had ever stopped them. Not the prize, gallery showings, or collectors that bought my art. Since the jokes weren't about me, they kept joking. They were uneasy with a girl that didn't suit their ideal daughter. Maya texted me wondering if I was home, all right, and if she could come over. She arrived 40 minutes later with Chinese takeout and champagne after I texted my address. She placed everything on my kitchen counter and pulled out containers without asking. Have begun opening boxes and received plates. She waited for me to chat on my couch with food on our laps. I told her about the manufactured evidence, how I manipulated the images, made up the eye color issue, and assumed my grandma was a painter. She ate her lo mein gently without interruption. Just let me explain my weeks-long planning. She chewed and thought for a while after I finished. She asked me what would happen once I was satisfied. After seeing them squirm, I realized I hadn't considered past the speech or their looks when they realized I was leveraging their joke against them. She nodded, understanding why I did it. They'd been terrible for years and deserved to be called out. She also warned that families don't forget public humiliation, So the repercussions will be worse than imagined. The next morning, my gallery owner called while I made coffee. Her voice sounded cautious and professional, like she was trying not to sound nervous, but she was. She mentioned family turmoil at a gathering this weekend. Someone posted Instagram videos spreading that word in the art community. I responded I was okay when she inquired. Just family things. She then made her point. She worried this would damage my image since I won a big prize and had a showing next month. She said collectors and gallery owners talk. They want dependable, skilled artists they invest in. I didn't realize my personal life bursting would affect my job, so my gut twisted. She promised not to cancel, but wanted me to know that people were asking questions and I should keep a low profile. After we hung up, I stared at my phone on my couch and understood the repercussions went well beyond my family. This problem was affecting my professional reputation, which I'd developed independently of my parents. I scarcely left my flat for 3 days. I worked on a new sculpture in my spare bedroom studio, ignored most of my communications, and pretended everything was normal. Ryan unexpectedly knocked on my house late Wednesday afternoon. Through the peephole, I saw him tired. It looked like he slept in his shirt. He entered without invitation when I opened the door. Straight to my sofa and sat heavily. He stated Tara was upset with me and had been calling our mother every day to soothe her. Their kids were asking why grandmother and grandpa were sobbing and what occurred at the celebration. Ryan stroked his hair and noted, I'd made everything complicated for everyone. That now he was stuck in the middle trying to keep peace with our parents while his wife thought I'd lost my mind. I watched him in my kitchen doorway and felt jealous because he was talking about how hard it was. I reacted and asked if he'd observed how they treated me differently and felt all those jokes were harsh. He glanced up shocked, like he didn't expect me to fight back. He said he'd noticed but felt I was strong enough to withstand their humor. I laughed ugly and unfunny. I asked him how I was meant to manage years of being told I wasn't theirs, having my partner hear those jokes and decide my family was too twisted up and receiving a national award and having them make the joke in front of the presenter. Ryan stated he didn't think it was that horrible and that it simply appeared like their bizarre way of goofing about from where he was. When just one person laughed, I informed him it was brutality disguised as humor. This was our first meaningful discourse about our childhood, lasting about 2 hours. Because of how they judged me, Ryan always felt pressure to be perfect. He believed that if he was good enough, did everything properly, got perfect grades, played the sports they wanted, and married the right girl, they would relax on me. But it never worked since their issue wasn't my conduct or choices. My existence as an outsider was their concern. He told me about staying awake in high school worried about failing them, choosing business school over history, and feeling like he had to be enough for them. I'd never known that. For years I thought he was their favorite and didn't have to struggle for their acceptance. He worked for it continually, but in a different way, wanting to be flawless so no one could criticize him. Ryan departed my flat as the sun sank without a solution. He appeared at my door and said, Tara wanted me to know I wasn't welcome at family events until this got fixed, until I apologized to our parents. And everyone could move past it. It broke my heart to think of Owen and Emma, my niece and nephew, and not seeing them. I was estranged from them because of what I did. They were 7 and 5, too young to comprehend adult turmoil. My expression changed, and Ryan looked regretful but didn't erase it. He stated Tara had to shield her kids from family strife. I was pandemonium now. After he went, I sobbed on my floor with my back to the door for the first time since the party. Not because I regretted my actions, but because I realized the cost. I expected to lose my parents, but not my brother's family. Claire called 2 days later to inform me my parents told everyone. My parents were ruling at a cousin's birthday party where she was. They told everyone I'd suffered a mental breakdown, that they were worried about me, that I'd always been sensitive and that I was managing things, but they were mistaken. Rewriting the party's events, they posed as worried parents with a problematic daughter. Claire claimed others were believing it, nodding compassionately and asking how they could assist. My mother wailed about how she didn't know what she did wrong raising me, and how she tried so hard to encourage my work, even if she didn't understand it. My father suggested I undergo therapy to get through whatever was causing my behavior. Claire was upset, but she couldn't stand up in the party and speak the truth. She wanted me to know they were controlling the story and victimizing themselves. My cousin Carla emailed me that night to hear my story. She wanted to hear from me since the family group chat was full of varied stories. I wrote everything on my laptop, every childhood joke I remembered. Presenter's startled look at award ceremony. Ethan dumped me due of our odd family dynamic. Anniversary celebration speech with fake evidence. I wrote about how they'd made me feel unwanted my whole life and how I resolved to show them. It took me an hour to compose. After finishing, I forwarded it to Carla and 2 other relatives I'd always known. They spoke to me at family functions instead of simply being there. Responses arrived the following day. Carla said that she'd always thought the jokes were nasty but didn't believe it was her place to say anything, regretting not speaking out earlier. Tom, my cousin, said he shuddered at family meals hearing them make similar comments but thought I could handle it. My cousin Olivia wrote back that I'd gone too far, that parents aren't perfect, but public humiliation was harsh, and I owed them an apology. My 2 other relatives agreed with my email. Olivia claimed family matters should be private and my actions were unacceptable. After reading all the replies, I understood my family was divided, people deciding if years of emotional pain merited one night of public retaliation. I shut off my laptop and realized things would never be the same. That I had shattered something in my family that wouldn't mend easily or ever. I answered my mother's sister's call the next day by mistake. She talked for 20 minutes about respect and family loyalty, how I degraded my parents in front of everyone they knew, and how I should feel sorry for destroying their wonderful night. She stopped me from talking about the years of jokes, the prize ceremony, Ethan, and everything else, saying I was too sensitive. She stated my parents' humor was theirs, and I should have thicker skin and stopped being so emotional. She claimed families tease one another and I'd traumatized typical parent behavior when I just couldn't take a joke. I disconnected midway through another thankfulness lesson. I couldn't sleep that night or 3 following. I replayed the party, seeing my mother go white, hearing my father yell, and seeing guests whip out their phones. I relived other occasions. I was 9 when the restaurant told the server I was adopted, an award ceremony at Thanksgiving when I was 12. I lay there looking at the ceiling till morning because my head wouldn't shut down. By the 4th night, I needed aid. Luckily, a therapist had an opening that week. Therapists have modest, tranquil offices. Many plants and gentle lighting were designed to be relaxing. She asked me what drew me in, so I told her everything from childhood until the anniversary party. Without interrupting, she listened. After I finished, she asked what I wanted from the bogus evidence. I told her what I'd been telling myself about wanting them to understand. Then I stopped. Since they'd made me feel rejected and unloved my whole life, I wanted them to feel the same. I wanted people to feel terrible when someone they love makes them the punchline. I wanted them to experience being mocked and excluded. I felt vulnerable saying I wanted to injure them as the therapist nodded and scribbled something down. My father emailed me 3 weeks after the celebration. His lawyer's office sent a chilly official email with legal letterhead. The statement stated that they removed me from their will promptly after great deliberation. Professionally written. Pure facts concerning estate planning and changed beneficiary designations. I laughed after reading it twice. Unexpected hysterical laughter that wouldn't stop. They'd exclude me from the will. It was their greatest prank. My ultimate proof that I wasn't theirs. I laughed till I sobbed, then cried at my kitchen table with my laptop open to that frigid email. Maya helped me pack family photographs the next day. About 15 images were dispersed over my flat, mainly in drawers. I put most in the garbage bag she provided after going through them one by one. Parents looking uncomfortable during high school graduation. A family Christmas photo without me smiling. My parents trashed a restaurant I don't recall. One shot of Claire and me at my art school exhibition was retained, the 2 of us smiling. Ironically, I retained one of Ryan and myself as kids, maybe 5 and 7, making something with blocks on the living room floor. Before our relationship got complex, we appeared joyful. The gallery owner contacted me the next week about a collector interested in one of my larger paintings. She seemed embarrassed, explaining that he'd backed out of the deal because of my stability. He didn't want to invest in an artist with personal issues after hearing about the family drama. I was irritated because my personal life was impacting my work, which I'd developed separately from my family. They were damaging my art career, which I had spent years building. Before saying something regrettable, I assured the gallery owner I understood and hung up. Ryan contacted 3 days later to invite me to family therapy with our parents. I laughed out loud reading the letter since admitting they required treatment was ludicrous. Therapy was for weak individuals who couldn't handle their problems, my parents felt. I texted that I'd consider it, but wasn't ready, which was true. I couldn't fathom sitting with them right now without going crazy. Claire contacted that night to say she was exhausted by being caught in the midst. She wouldn't stop talking to me, therefore my parents wouldn't talk to her. She was tired of family gatherings where people muttered about picking sides, my mother calling her unfaithful, and being pressed to choose. I told her she didn't have to take sides since I didn't want her involved. She was quiet for a moment, then stated she picked sides years ago when she witnessed how they treated me and wasn't abandoning me because it was difficult. I met Tara in the grocery store 2 weeks later and it was weird. In the produce department, we froze. She had a cart of kids' treats and I had sad single-person groceries. She politely inquired how I was doing without wanting to know. Then she stated she didn't know what to say when the kids asked about me. She stated Ryan was anxious trying to preserve peace and wished I'd apologize to restore normalcy. I knew Tara didn't comprehend as I held a bag of apples. She only knew Ryan's and my parents' version, where I was nasty and theatrical for no reason. She hesitated when I asked her to hear my story. She retreated with her cart. She stated she needed to support her spouse and couldn't if she knew my position too well. She claimed she had to go and pulled her cart away, leaving me in produce alone. My next therapy session focused on why I chose public humiliation over private conflict. The therapist asked why I didn't talk to them first, explain how the jokes affected me, and let them stop before retaliating. I wanted witnesses to see them squirm like they did me at that award presentation when the presenter looked frightened. I wanted all their joke laughter fans to see them ashamed, uncomfortable, and desperate. I needed confirmation that I wasn't crazy or sensitive and that their cruelty justified my rage. I replied yes and no to the therapist since I only felt good for 30 seconds before everything fell apart. 2 days later, I read my cousin Carla's Facebook post while browsing. I wasn't named, but it was evident. Pride is less essential than how true family endures hardship and forgives. Relatives agreed, discussing loyalty and how some individuals crave attention. I read each comment and watched additional individuals join for around 5 minutes. I blocked Carla. Her mom remarked, so I blocked her. I excluded 2 relatives who discussed respect and family values. I noticed something odd as my finger hovered over each block button. I was okay. I wasn't wounded or furious or trying to protect myself. I'm done with folks who think I should silently endure years of maltreatment like decent daughters do. A smaller social media circle made me feel lighter, not sadder. Ethan unexpectedly messaged me that week. I felt sick when I heard since I hadn't thought about him in months. He stated common friends told him about the gathering. He wrote a long note about feeling sorry about abandoning me during family problems. He understood the jokes upset me but didn't know how to assist, and he couldn't stand it anymore. He felt horrible about choosing peace over me. Even after hearing everything I had through, he said the dynamic was too broken for him to handle. He hoped I was okay, but he couldn't remain. So I read it 3 times to find out how I felt. I replied that I no longer blamed him. I told him I realize you can't cure someone else's family issues. You can only determine if you can live with them or leave for your mental health. I stated his option was probably healthier, even if it hurt. He answered quickly, stating he was delighted I got it and hoped it worked out. It was left. No drama, no anger, just 2 individuals who attempted something that failed and could accept it. After closing the message thread, I felt better about the split. I was right to be saddened by his leaving. Ryan texted 3 days later with a parental message. I could talk to them again if I apologized on Facebook. They wanted me to apologize for embarrassing them at their anniversary and acknowledge I lied. The message said it had to be public so everyone who observed the party turmoil could see me apologize. I read it again to confirm I understood the question. They wanted me to confess I was wrong, while denying responsibility. They asked me to degrade myself like I humiliated them to get their forgiveness. I texted Ryan quickly to say no. When they made me feel unwelcome my whole life, I told him I wasn't admitting I was wrong. He remained silent. In my next therapy appointment, the therapist said something that made me leave. She said both may be true. Their jokes and my retribution were nasty and wrong. She claimed I could be their victim and still be responsible for my actions. I fought with her for 10 minutes. Being perfect was my goal. I wanted utter falsehoods. I wanted it to be that easy because else I had to accept that I wounded people on purpose, which made me ill. She let me debate and then urged me to ponder. Next several weeks I continued thinking about it. The possibility of being injured and causing it. That knowing why didn't excuse my actions. That they may be bad parents and I could have reacted poorly. It was the hardest treatment item to accept. For Thanksgiving, Maya asked me to her family's house. I nearly declined since sitting at someone else's family table felt improper, but I realized this was my first Thanksgiving without my parents, and I didn't want to spend it alone in my apartment eating takeout. I was hugged like an old friend as her parents answered the door. The place smelled like turkey and pie, and people laughed and spoke. Nobody joked about my alienation. Nobody criticized my diet, clothes, or performance. Maya's mother inquired about my paintings and listened. Her dad recounted a charming, non-derogatory anecdote about Maya as a child. After dinner, I went to the restroom and wept for 5 minutes because this is family meal. No delicate steps. Stop waiting for the joke that makes everyone laugh but me. Kind individuals being kind because they wanted to. I wasn't expecting much for my birthday a few weeks later. Maya brought me to drinks the night before. Claire sent flowers to my flat. Ryan called when I made coffee that morning. He didn't mention the party, parents, or mess. He inquired how I was doing and informed me Owen learned to cycle and Emma started reading chapter books. We discussed mundane topics for 20 minutes. His job, my current sculpture, the weather. We had the most natural chat in months. I hadn't realized how much I missed talking to my brother without anything else. Even though our family was so fractured, I was happy he was trying when we hung up. That afternoon my mother left a voicemail. My muscles tightened when I saw her name on my phone. I almost skipped it, but I couldn't. She mentioned she'd been thinking about me on my birthday in a melancholy voice. She missed me and wanted change. Hope rose in my chest for 10 seconds. She stated she'd seen anniversary party photographs and how happy everyone was before I wrecked it. She hoped I was pleased after ruining their wonderful day and tearing the family apart. I stared at my phone when the message finished. She couldn't even wish me a happy birthday without mentioning what I did to her. I banned her phone and removed her voicemail without saving. Claire contacted me a week after my birthday to report my parents' marital problems. They were apparently arguing over who caused the party fiasco. My father felt my mother should have been more careful with her jokes over time. My mother stated my father laughed most and encouraged jokes. They each rewrote history to improve themselves and blame each other. Claire stated they could not assume responsibility. They'd rather fight than admit they injured their daughter. She considered public retaliation her only choice. Listening to Claire narrate their battles, I felt nothing. No joy in their pain, no guilt for my fault. I felt empty like I was hearing about strangers. The gallery owner phoned 2 weeks later regarding a commission. Tech companies sought large sculptures for their headquarters foyer. Big budget, creative flexibility, career-boosting project. I immediately wanted to notify my parents after hanging up. I looked for my dad's number before realizing I couldn't call. We remained silent. He excluded me from the will. Mom's phone was banned. I had just Maya and Claire to celebrate this major professional success. I realized this was grief. Grief over relationships with living individuals who are now utterly. I didn't have parents who were enthusiastic about my disconnected from me. Achievement. I may never get that. Put my phone down and sat with the loss till it softened. At my next therapy appointment 2 weeks later, my therapist inquired if I'd considered repairing things with my parents. Just wanting them to stop being horrible was all I thought about it. I sat there trying to figure out what I needed from them. She gave me paper to write it down. I put sincere apology at the top and harm list what reconciliation requires. Acknowledged below. I incorporated boundary respect and behavior modification. I wrote until I had 10 items on the page, and when I looked at them, my chest sank. They couldn't do it. My parents couldn't apologize without explanations or retaliation. They had to minimize harm or say I was overly sensitive. My therapist nodded like she'd been waiting for me to find out that a meaningful relationship with them was worthless, as the list showed. Ryan texted me 3 days later to invite me to Owen's birthday celebration. He said Tara let me attend provided I promised not to raise trouble or mention the anniversary party fiasco. I gazed at the message for a long time, angry that they felt I required that condition like a bomb at a kid's birthday party. I missed Owen and Emma so terribly it ached. I replied back saying I'd be there and settle things down. Ryan replied with party plans and a thumbs up, and I spent the week thrilled to see everyone again. On Saturday afternoon, I brought Owen a gift to their home party. He'd adore this art set. The mood shifted as I entered. Tara grinned without looking at me, but she watched me like I'd shout. Ryan hugged me briefly before starting to help the other guests. I played with the kids, helped Owen unwrap his presents, sang happy birthday, and avoided actual conversations. Every chat was about weather, traffic, or kids' growth. Tara's parents paid me little attention. Just tight grins before turning away. After 2 hours, the stress was so intense I couldn't breathe, so I told Ryan I had to go early. Owen looked upset when I left, making it harder. Ryan texted that night that the kids appreciated my presence. He remarked, Owen kept asking when I'd visit again, and Emma wanted to show me her new chapter books. His text astonished me. He said he was attempting to maintain connections with me and our parents. He claimed, every time he talked to me they asked what we discussed, whether I'd apologized yet, if I was coming to my senses. He felt trapped and didn't know how to please everyone. I could tell from his messages that the pressure was getting to him. 2 days later, Ryan forwarded me a bunch of messages from our parents. They'd found out I was at the birthday party and were furious with him for inviting me. My mother wrote that I was a bad influence who would poison the kids against them. I read all the texts again and felt terrible. They were so controlling, trying to compel Ryan to exclude me from the family. It wasn't enough that they weren't talking to me. They needed everyone else to reject me, too. My next therapy session focused on why they'd made those jokes for so long. My therapist asked me what I believed was occurring when they called me not theirs, and I worked through it out loud. They were insecure about their lives and disappointed that things hadn't gone as planned. I was different from them in every way, but they rejected me and made me feel like the problem because accepting me would mean accepting their limited worldview. The jokes weren't about me. In that therapy office, I realized my parents had spent my whole childhood making me feel unwanted because they couldn't handle their own insecurity. That didn't make the hurt go away or fix anything. I still felt all the years of rejection and casual cruelty, but it helped me see them as flawed people who handled their limitations badly. I became less angry and more sad that they couldn't be different. Sad I'd never have the parents I wanted. Sad we'd wasted so much time on this toxic dynamic instead of getting to know each other. Maya planned a weekend trip to this little beach town 3 hours away. We walked on the beach, ate good food, and stayed up late talking about everything except my family. My art career, friendships, apartment, and life existed because I worked for it without their approval or support. They didn't give me anything that mattered. I created my own path and succeeded on my own terms. That felt powerful in a way I hadn't realized before. Claire called when we returned to say my parents wanted to meet with me, just the three of us, without lawyers or other family members. She thought they might be ready to talk this time, but she warned me not to expect too much because people don't change overnight. I told her I'd think about it and hung up, feeling nervous about the whole idea. I spent 3 days thinking about whether to meet them. I almost texted Ryan to say no at least 3 times. But finally, I decided I needed to hear what they had to say, even if it went badly. I texted Claire back and said I'd meet them at a coffee shop neither of us went to, somewhere neutral where we wouldn't run into people we knew. She set it up for the following Saturday at 10 a.m. I felt scared and anxious, wondering if I was making a mistake and setting myself up for more hurt. On Saturday morning, I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where no one could hear us if we were noisy. When I ordered my coffee, my hands were shaking and I spilled some on the counter because I couldn't hold the cup steady. I sat down facing the door and watched people come in, checking my phone every 30 seconds even though I knew the time. My parents arrived at exactly 10 o'clock, both looking older than I remembered from just a few months ago. My mother's eyes were red like she'd been crying that morning, and my father's jaw was tight. My mother started crying immediately, pulling tissues from her purse and dabbing her eyes. My father cleared his throat twice before speaking and said they'd been thinking about everything that happened. He said they never meant to hurt me with the jokes and thought I understood they were joking. My mother nodded and said she was shocked when I did that at their party because she really believed I knew they loved me, even if they teased. I felt my chest tighten listening to them because they still weren't getting it. My father said he was hurt that I would lie and embarrass them in front of everyone they knew. He said their friends had been calling asking if everything was okay, and they didn't know what to tell people. I started listing everything I could remember, from the restaurant when I was 8 and ordered pasta instead of steak to the soccer field when I quit, and my mother told the other parents I must not be hers to the Thanksgiving when I was 12 with the black hair, my ex leaving because he said my family was too weird. Every dinner, holiday and time they introduced me to someone new with that same joke. My mother kept interrupting me to explain what they meant. She said the restaurant thing was funny because I was such a picky eater, the award ceremony comment was their way of showing their pride in a joking way, and they never thought I took it seriously because I seemed fine. I snapped and told her I didn't care. I said, intentions don't matter when you spend years making your kid feel unwanted. I said, impact is what counts. And I grew up thinking they wished they had a different daughter. My father got red and started arguing, but I kept going. I told them about the nights I cried in my room wondering what was wrong with me. I told them I gave up on trying to be different, to like what they liked, to fit what they wanted because I wasn't built the way they expected. My father was quiet for a long time after that. He stared at his hands on the table and I could see him thinking. Finally, he said they were probably too hard on me because I was so different from them and Ryan and they didn't understand why. He said they didn't know how to connect with a kid who liked art, books and theater when they were all about sports and business. He didn't apologize. It wasn't an apology, but it was the first time he'd ever admitted fault. My mother nodded, but she looked uncomfortable. Like she wanted to argue but knew she couldn't. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, but maybe a little understanding that they were just people who screwed up, not monsters who hated me on purpose. I told them I couldn't keep having a relationship where I was the punchline of their jokes or around people who treated my differences like defects or made me feel like I had to prove I was good enough to be part of the family because it reminded me that I didn't fit their daughter mold, and I was done feeling bad about that. They looked uncomfortable and shifted in their seats. My mother said she'd try to do better, saying she didn't realize how much the jokes bothered me and she'd be more careful about what she said. My father nodded and said they could work on it. I didn't believe them, but at least they acknowledged an issue. After 20 minutes of talking in circles about the past and what went wrong, my father suggested we try family therapy together. He said they'd been seeing someone on their own, and the therapist thought it might help if I joined them. I was surprised they'd gone to therapy since they usually thought they did everything wrong. I told them I wouldn't promise anything and wouldn't say we'd fix our relationship, but I'd give therapy a chance to see if anything could be saved, but they needed to understand I might decide it wasn't worth it. They both agreed, and we exchanged numbers for the therapist so I could set up an appointment. Walking out of that coffee shop felt weird, like nothing was resolved but maybe something small had. The first family therapy session 2 weeks later was terrible. We sat in a small office with comfortable chairs and a box of tissues on every table. The therapist, a woman in her 50s, seemed nice when I met her in the waiting room, but my parents spent the entire hour defending themselves. My mother explained that the jokes were just their family's comedy. My father said I was always so sensitive and took things the wrong way. Every time the therapist tried to get them to talk about how their words affected me, they circled back to their intentions and said they never meant any harm. The therapist had to constantly redirect them, asking them to focus on my experience instead of their explanations. I left that session exhausted and wondering if it was worth it. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 15 minutes before I could drive home because I was so tired from fighting to be heard. The second session, 3 weeks later, went better. The therapist set ground rules about listening without interrupting and focusing on feelings rather than blame. She asked my father why he made jokes about me not being his kid. He paused and then said something unexpected. He admitted the jokes came from feeling disconnected from me. When I was little, he tried to bond with me over sports and outdoor stuff like he did with Ryan, but I wasn't interested. He didn't know how to relate to a daughter who wanted to read and do art instead of playing catch or fishing. He joked about that disconnect even though he knew it was wrong. It wasn't an excuse for years of making me feel unwanted, but it was honest. I could see him struggling to say it, and I realized he was struggling too. My mother had a much harder time taking responsibility. She spent most of the third and fourth sessions deflecting and explaining. Finally, in the fifth session, she admitted something surprising. She felt threatened by my independence and creativity, and that watching me succeed at art and build a career doing something she didn't understand made her feel less important. She said the jokes were her way of feeling less inadequate, which was twisted logic, but at least she was admitting she was wrong. After 3 months of weekly therapy, my parents were working on changing how they talked to me and about me. The therapist helped her see how she'd been projecting her own insecurity onto me, making me carry the weight of her disappointment with her own life. It didn't fix everything, but it helped me understand the jokes weren't about me. My mother called me twice to ask how I was doing without making any criticism, and my father sent me an article about a sculpture he saw in a magazine. These small things felt big after years of nothing, and I was trying to trust that the changes might stick this time. Our monthly dinners with the therapist helped us break out of old communication patterns. My parents learned to ask about my work instead of dismissing it, and I learned to give them a chance to be different instead of assuming the worst. It was slow and painful, and old habits came back, but we kept going to therapy and trying. Ryan called me one night, relieved that we were at least talking again. He said it had been hard being stuck in the middle, and he was glad we were working on things. Tara came around to me after months of being cold. She invited me to a barbecue at their house and talked to me like a normal person instead of a potential problem. When they saw me, the kids ran up and hugged me and asked where I'd been. Owen wanted to show me his new bike, and Emma wanted to show me her repainted room. Watching them laugh and play reminded me why I'd endure all the uncomfortable therapy sessions and difficult conversations. Keeping some kind of relationship with my family was worth the work, even if it was never perfect or easy. 6 months into therapy, I invited my parents to my next gallery showing without expecting them to come. But they arrived 20 minutes after the opening, appearing uncomfortable in their dress clothes and hovering near the entrance like they might need to leave. I watched them stare at my sculptures from across the room. Really stopped and read the descriptions, and my mother even took out her phone to take a picture of one piece. My father stood in front of my award-winning sculpture for almost 5 minutes, just staring at it. When an older couple asked him about it, he told them I was his daughter and that he was proud of my work. The couple asked more questions about my art, and my father answered them by saying I'd been doing sculpture since college and won a national award. He didn't make any jokes about me not being his real kid or wishing I'd done something else with my life. I had to leave to the bathroom because I felt tears coming. Claire saw me dabbing at my eyes with a tissue in the hallway outside the bathroom and hugged me without saying anything. When we went inside, she stood with me near the refreshments table and watched my parents slowly walk around the gallery, wiping her own eyes. She told me she'd spent years worrying about me, watching my parents treat me like a mistake, and she felt helpless because calling them out only made them defensive. She said seeing us all in the same room being civil, watching my father tell strangers he was proud of me, meant more to her than I probably understood. I thanked her for never giving up on me, for being the only one who consistently saw how cruel the jokes were, and called it after an hour, which was all they could handle. My parents left. My mother hugged me goodbye, and my father shook my hand and said it was a good show. It wasn't warm or comfortable or anything like I'd hoped for as a kid, but it was different, and that mattered. My parents will never understand my art or my choices, and years of feeling unwanted won't disappear because we're doing therapy, but we've established basic respect and boundaries. They catch themselves when they make jokes now, and they ask about my work instead of dismissing it. It's more than I expected 6 months ago when I sat in that first therapy session thinking it was pointless. I'm building a life that includes them in limited ways while prioritizing my chosen family. Maya attends every gallery opening. Claire calls me twice a week to check in, and my cousins who supported me have become closer friends. I see my parents once a month for supervised dinners and attend some family events where I can leave. I've accepted this as our relationship. The revenge at their anniversary party destroyed the toxic dynamic where they could joke about me not being theirs and I was supposed to just take it. The aftermath was brutal and messy, and I lost some family members who thought I went too far, but it forced necessary conversations. I'm finally okay with being myself, making art that matters to me, and building relationships with people who see me.